So, Liz, will you just tell me a little bit about yourself and your position within your company?
Absolutely. So my name is Liz Marchi. I am head of community engagement at Two Bear Capital here in Whitefish, Montana. Two Bear Capital is sort of the first top tier biotech focused venture capital fund to launch out of traditional areas like San Diego or Boston or New York or California. And we are focused on sort of on big picture, the intersection of electrical engineering and biology. So, bioinformatics, structural biology, oncology, neurology, and immunology are kind of our things. What I do at Two Bear Capital is build community for our firm here in Montana, for our founders as they grow wherever they are, with potential customers, potential mentors, future investors, future employees, opportunities for their own personal and professional growth. I am 68 years old. I grew up in Auburn, Alabama. My dad was a researcher and an entrepreneur. And growing up in a college town was such a lucky blessing to me because I grew up in a place where education was highly valued and supported. I was the oldest of four girls, but I will say life was really hard for me when I went sort of through puberty and became older because I really wanted to do lots of things that girls weren't supposed to do. And I liked math and I was curious and athletic. And I chose a women's college to go to in 1972. I was president of my student body. And sort of my entire career, I've always asked the question between what is and can be, therein lies the challenge. And I have found that not everybody's wired that way. I love change. I love to get up every day, and I always ask why. I'm not a good rule follower. I worked in the corporate world for a while, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot in that experience, but it wasn't for me. I really loved the startups and the strategy and but you've got to be a risk taker. You've got to kind of be an internal optimist. And I'm really right now, after I've been working 50 years, I've never had a position more than 7 years. And that's when I sort of did a startup economic development group here in the Flathead. So I really love the younger generation. I love their questioning about why do we have to do it this way? I want to have life and work. One of the hardest things for me right now at my age is I have always sort of been a workaholic, and that's not super healthy. Ask my kids. I have 3 children and 2 stepchildren. I feel for my kids because I was sort of a corporate mom, like get up, do this, do this, do this. But I sort of love that because, life is a long game. And we know now one of the things I'm just completely obsessed with is having a good health span, not just a lifespan.
And then was there a spot in your life where you had a female role model or maybe, a family member who just said, you can do whatever you want. You're not limited by your gender or where you grow up?
Well, I certainly had that at Hollins, where I went to college. I met so many women who had chosen women's colleges in the 40s and 50s and 60s that did incredible things. They ferried airplanes in World War II off the, assembly line. They started nonprofit organizations. I met women who were making real differences in their community, who were becoming lawyers in first wave. And even my graduating classes, we began the first wave of women in the workforce, but in the 70s, it was still very much an either or. Like having a family and a corporate life didn't really seem very possible. And here we are 50 years later, and it's still hard. We're getting there, but I have to laugh. This morning I was listening to Bloomberg. It's International Women's Day. Congratulations,
Yes.
all my women's friends. I love doing this today. But, I kept hearing all these interviews with corporate executives going, oh, we're trying to get women in the pipeline. And so I was actually in a program called Leadership America in 1999 that, like, all the major insurance companies underwrote. It was a national program to try to get women in the C-suite. And what they don't get is that women are capable, they're able, but we still don't have a family-friendly policy in this country. Mm-hmm. And particularly in money places like Wall Street, these people are working 80, 100 hours a week. That's just not a healthy, good thing for anybody. And women drop out. They want families. And I have to say, I had a lot of questioning about my choice to get married. I stayed home for 13 years with my kids. I ran every school bond campaign. I was PTA president. I did a lot of non-compensated labor, which I was grateful to do because I could do it on my schedule. But 13 years at the time seemed like an eternity. Now it doesn't seem so much, but we just have to have a better culture for raising families, being healthy, and work.
And what do you kind of hope will change to kind of break down those barriers and those dividers in the future?
I think at a very young age, we know, for example, girls in math and science, we lose them after puberty. I've been very involved for a program called Code Girls, and we know that 5th grade is the magic year to get them hooked on coding or whatever, because our hormones have not caught up to the world we live in. And I loved this great quote I read the other day. The big entomologist, and actually he's from Alabama, but he taught at Harvard for years. He said, we live in a world where we have the hormones and emotions of a Neanderthal, we have the institutions of the medieval era, and we have the technology of God.
Wow, interesting.
I just thought that was such a profound way to put what we're trying to manage through right now as employees, as parents, as a society, as a world.
Okay, is there any other parting advice you want to offer? Any women out there, or females who are looking to kind of advance in their careers and in their spots in life? What advice would you offer them?
From a very early age, it's really important to speak up. It's always important to speak up. I remember my first stance as a feminist was probably in the 4th grade, because that was when you could be a patrol boy and like help people cross the road. And, I was going to be a leader. Well, girls couldn't do the patrol. And there was no reason for that, except that I was a girl. I could hold the flag. I was smart enough to do it. And then the patrol boys got a day off in the spring to go to the lake and ski. And that seemed completely unfair. And yes, the world is not fair. I get that. And we're not all equal. I get that. We are all valuable. But you always have to speak up. And, I've had a lot of my feminist friends say, but you came from the South, so you know how to do that nicely. Nobody likes a jerk of a guy either. I mean, but always do that. And the other thing as women is that we are wired to nurture. We're not wired necessarily to fight. I mean, I can be a fighter if I need to, but being a lover's got me a lot further down the road. Let's put it that way. But definitely never back off. Wait and get a seat at the table. The most important thing for me, I didn't even know what venture capital was till I was probably 45. It is, day and night I could work. I love the work. I love the learning. I love the process, the logic, the art. However, to be a great venture capitalist, you need to have some really deep technical proficiencies. So push yourself. failure, lack of failure, in my opinion, and I tell my kids this, means you're not, if you don't fail, you're not pushing yourself hard enough. And most of the time when you fail, it's not because you can't do it, it's because of something else. But you absolutely have to be a risk taker. And in fact, I spend a lot of time with women talking to them, especially at sort of that 45 to 55. It's like, I've been working 20 years. I'm not where I want to be. I'm not loving what I'm doing. But I say, well, what are you afraid of? Well, not getting a paycheck every 2 weeks, having health care. But what's the real worst that can happen? You always have to know what you're willing to risk for a reward. And it's not always easy, but you got to really know what you want. And a lot of times knowing what you want is getting things and not being satisfied with it, knowing that's definitely not what you don't want. Just know yourself, and it's different for everybody. Don't say, I want to be her or that, or, I mean, I have so many of my super successful friends who, you know, paid a high price to be on Wall Street, or paid a really high price to not have a family. Of all the things I least regret, it was having a family. It was really hard to take that time. And, you know, having a family doesn't always pencil very well. It just doesn't. But so take risk, never be afraid to reach out to men or women who, you know, you think are interesting, can teach you something, and always be a lifelong learner. Absolutely. I mean, to me, sort of the holy grail of life is, you know, meaningful work, service to others in some way, and being a lifelong learner. Like, that's so critical to, I think, finding satisfaction at any point in your life. And it's